All right, welcome back to the shop. So I'm going to do a video today about the air dryer system on these growlers, the M1161 M1163 growler. There's a couple of components to the system, and I know there's some confusion to people as to what the components are, what they do and what they're for. Okay, so here's a quick overview of how the system works. Okay, so you have your compressor here. It's a 24-volt air compressor. It builds up to 150 psi on the system. So the air comes out here at the outlet port, goes through this nylon stainless steel braided line, goes through the one-way check valve. If this one-way check valve goes bad, you're going to have air come back and it's going to leak out of the reeds here. And that's not a good thing. You're going to hear it coming out the filter here. But anyways, it goes through the one-way check valve, goes through this line, and then here you have the Consep unit, the condenser separator unit, and they're usually just mounted, nicely in here. The air goes in here. As it goes inside, there's a coil inside there, like a pipe inside that coils around, and the air goes through that coil, and then after it exits the coil down to bottom, any moisture that gets condensed from the air cooling, because we know that warmer air holds more moisture. So I believe 20 degrees the air temperature increases, it can hold twice as much moisture. That's why we call it relative humidity, because it's humidity, water relative to the temperature. So when the air comes out of this compressor, it's hot. These things make a lot of heat, especially when they've been running for 5, 6, 7 minutes, building up to that 150 psi. They're making pretty hot air. So it comes through here, it goes through those coils. It's got the fins here to exchange heat. As that air cools down, the moisture condenses out because the air can't hold that moisture anymore because now it's cooler. Can't hold as much. So the moisture just settles down here in this sump, and then the air just continues up through the body and out this top port. And then after it exits that top port, it goes through this hose right here into the air dryer. This is a desiccant type air dryer, and that desiccant inside collects any more moisture that's in there, and then it settles down to the bottom. And then the air itself escapes out this hose and goes to the rest of the system. Now, the way that these are set up, this Consep has an electric drain valve on the bottom. The desiccant air dryer just has an air actuated drain valve on the bottom. And so the way that this works for these to activate, so if your vehicle doesn't have the iCube update, as this one doesn't, there's a timer behind the dash, and as you're running the vehicle, just as time goes by, once the timer is satisfied, it sends an electrical charge or impulse to this valve, which opens it up momentarily just for a burst of air to come out. When that burst of air comes out, it empties any moisture out of this sump. And then it also activates this valve right here. And this valve here, it'll shoot a puff of air into the bottom of the air dryer here, and that'll force air to come out of the sump at the bottom of that as well. So it purges the moisture out of that, purges moisture out of this. Now, we found that on these iCube updates, which here's an example of an iCube update. You've got the new style headlights, you've got there's a lot of changes they do. You have the different lap belts, the 5-point lap belts and all that. They took the timer out from behind the dash on those, and they hooked it up to the brake light system. So every time you hit the brakes, when the brake lights are energized, that's when these get the power to discharge. So every time you hit your brakes, you're going to hear psh, you're going to hear air come out of these valves. Now, if you get a constant flow of air, something's wrong with your system. You need to address that and find out what your problem is. One thing about them is, we know that the brake lights won't work on these trucks unless you have your headlights. You either sit on stoplight or on headlights, and they did that so that, because if you have this and off, you kind of don't want to be detected. So obviously you don't want the noise puffing out of this thing, or you don't want to hear that air escaping out of these things to try to keep it quieter. And so if you don't run with your brake lights on, this isn't gonna clean. So say you're working this thing on a farm, or you're just using it off-road all the time, and you don't care to use your lights, you don't use your brake lights, and you have the iCube update, these aren't gonna purge. So if you do have the iCube update, even though you're using this thing off-road, put that switch at least in the first detent so you have brake lights, and that'll help to make sure that you get all the moisture out of your air. It would take a long time for this thing to fill up, actually, and then to get air into here, and then for it to get from here to here. But once you do that, you've destroyed your Consep, you've destroyed your air dryer, and then you're getting moisture in your tank, and you're going to rust out your tank. You're going to have all kinds of problems in there. And even though you have these, we always upgrade to a cable pull style air tank drain on these right here, and that, well, you know, every time you use this thing, or at least once a month or whatever, you know, just pull those cables, or if you don't have those, open your drains manually and let any moisture out that may have gotten past these. It's pretty rare that stuff's going to get past these, but you never know. You still want to check those and drain those. Now, if you live in a really humid place, you definitely want this, the Consep, because it's going to get rid of most of your moisture. These here, the desiccant type air dryers, when these do get to the end of their life cycle, this is replaceable. There's 4 bolts. This thing will just lift right off. You buy a new one and you just bolt it right back on. Where I live in Southern California, it's pretty much dry year round. We get some humidity here and there. This air dryer would suffice for me. It wouldn't matter. I actually don't need this. I'm still going to leave it on mine just because then I'll never have to change this, probably, because this is going to get probably 90% of the moisture. So these Conceps do wear out. If you look at this literature that comes with them, it does talk about how often you should inspect them to make sure that they're actually doing their job. And look at this, 24 months if it's a light duty over-the-road tractor trailer operation. Well, that tractor trailer operation, they're running probably like a 5 CFM, 7 CFM compressor on their engine. They're using their air brakes all day. They're going through a lot of air volume. These don't go through a lot of air volume. You fill up your airbags, right? And once they're full, you leave them. They're just where they are until maybe they've settled or you want to change something. Or if you go to use your rear steering, this cylinder here that releases the locks uses such a little amount of air. We're really not putting that much air through this system. So, you know, even here, like 6 months for heavy duty refuse use, city transit, we're not on any one of those. But I would still recommend maybe that 24 months. You want to check it out, make sure that the system's still working. If you're starting to get moisture in your tanks, that's an indication that it's probably not working anymore. Or if this is sticking on and you've got air bleeding, leaking out of it, it's probably time to replace it. That's what we found on this one here. This truck was already done. The owner wants me to keep it for a few weeks just to drive it and just make sure nothing else comes up. Well, this came up. This started leaking air. So I actually got a new unit for this one. So this one's coming out and, you know, we're putting a new one in. That's why this is all apart. So that's about it on these. And I want to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Hit the like button, please. All this stuff really helps. And if you comment, that helps me a lot with YouTube, so that my videos can get shared with more people. YouTube will see that you guys are, you know, interested in what you're seeing, and then they'll share it with more people. And that helps me a lot. Gives me the encouragement and stuff to be able to keep going, making these videos, you know, to help you guys out. So anyways, thanks for watching and have a good day.